I studied antisocial personality for a long time. I studied male antisocial behavior and female antisocial behavior. The patterns they overlap, but they have their distinctions. And one of them is early sexual experience and multiple sexual partners. And so it turns out that the constellation of symptoms that's associated with criminality and its extension into psychopathy is also associated with short-term mating strategies, promiscuity. So what does pornography do? Well,
Did bro just drop correlation between the most dangerous types of human beings and corn?
it's pretty self-evident once you know those other facts. It's like it tilts people hard towards a short-term mating outlook, and that's a bad idea. It's like it's not a good idea to employ sexuality in the services of short-term gratification. Why? Because short-term gratification is a bad strategy. Why? Because short-term gratification doesn't iterate well, and you know this. This is why it's not that good an idea to overuse cocaine. It's like, well, it's a great drug. Activates the system that is at the base of positive emotion itself. That's what it does technically. Why not use it? Because people, psychologists, researchers think, well, why do people use drugs? That's a stupid question. Yeah, I'm dead serious about that. We absolutely know why people use drugs. What we don't know is why everyone doesn't use them all the time. And here's how we know this, for example. You have a biological system within you that is activated when you're moving towards valuable goals. And the subjective experience of activation of that system is positive emotion. It's enthusiasm. It's engagement. It's the sense that you're doing something vital and meaningful. And cocaine and drugs like it activate that system. So it's no mystery at all why people will use cocaine. Well, so what happens if you use it all the time? The answer is you go downhill very, very rapidly. And short-term impulsive hedonic gratification is not a strategy that iterates well across time. And short-term sexual gratification strategies have exactly the same problem. Now, imagine this is happening more and more commonly, by the way. So,
By the way, I have some stuff to say, but I can't stop listening to that guy. And what can I even add? I decided to try something new to see if I can just react on the spot. Like I promised, I didn't watch it in advance. And so it's a very interesting experience for me. I'll still post the video and we'll see what happens. Maybe you'll get a lot of views, maybe not. But let's keep going and I'll keep in mind what I want to add. But let's see what he has to say now.
women free themselves from the shackles of monogamous relationships and are more likely to engage in short-term mating strategies, you might think that's a very good thing for men. But turns out it's not such a good thing for men because women are quite picky. And so women rate 80% of men online as below average in attractiveness. And whereas men rate 50% of women as below average in attractiveness, which by the way is true, right, statistically. But it's 80% of men. And so what that means is that the attention of women in an open mating market is focused on a very small percentage of men. And what's happening in colleges and universities where women dominate in terms of proportion of population is that all the women are chasing a very small number of men.
It seems like he's saying that's a bad thing. And I'll say something controversial, Jordan Peterson. I disagree with you here. It's almost scary to say that because it's like, how can you do, he's such a good debater and philosopher. But I disagree that that's a problem because I genuinely have this deep belief that anyone can become attractive. Now, there's stuff that's genetic. So height, looks, sure. But women care less about looks in men than men care about looks in women. And that is a fact. There's a lot of proof out there. So man's attractiveness comes a lot from character, leadership, masculine energy, presence, intelligence, social skills, resources. More importantly, resourcefulness, confidence. That is much more important than looks for men. Therefore, I believe if that's the main problem of the sexual revolution, that's not a problem. It just keeps us more accountable to become the best version of ourselves. Because what's beautiful is, even, matter of fact, the less you give a fuck about being attractive to women and the more you give a fuck about living a life of meaning that you love and that you enjoy, the more you're going to be attractive to women. It's this paradox. And so I don't think that's a problem for me personally. Even if I look at it objectively, not just subjectively in my own life, hasn't been a problem, but objectively, if we're talking about competition in mating and having more women, it actually gives you an advantage, because while everybody's still addicted to corn and to cheap dopamine, like he mentioned before, well, you work on yourself, and then it's like it's never been easier to stand out because the average is so low. So let's see what you got, JP.
So most of the men have no partners at all, and some of the men have more partners than they know what to do with. And so those men pursue short-term mating strategies, which is not so good for the women because they just as soon have an actual relationship. But then you might ask, well, what does it do to the men? And that's easy, is that it trains them to adopt antisocial short-term mating strategies. And that's really bad practice. Because if you practice exploiting people for your momentary gratification, then you'll become an expert at that. And that's an antisocial / psychopathic mode of interaction. And you might say, so what? Look at all the sex. And the answer is, well, that's just not going to work out very well for you as you try to build yourself something approximating a stable and fulfilling life. Because you are not going to be able to do that if you treat other people as if they're the device for your momentary gratification.
Okay. Good point. Good point. Like, I'm telling you, it's JP. Good point. This idea, this desire that us men have, as soon as we start feeling better about ourselves, we start, developing ourselves, we start getting more confident, and all of a sudden we get more attraction, we get more attention from women. I've fallen in that trap so many times that he describes, where you're like, oh shit, okay, well, let me, sex, wow, okay, a lot of sex, let's have fun. And for men who are watching this, who've been down that path before, you know where that leads. If you fully go into it, you know where that leads. It's never enough. It becomes this never enough game. Kind of like when you're watching porn. It's the same, but in real life. So of course, if you had to choose, of course, real life is better. At least you're actually having experiences that are not on pixels. But it doesn't lead down a path of fulfillment. And an exercise I invite everybody to do, when you're making a decision in life, push it to the extreme. Push both scenarios to the extreme, okay? So let's take the classic dilemma. Should I find a woman, commit, and then be with one woman the rest of my life right now? Or should I live my 20s, maybe even 30s for someone, having experiences and being all over the place and having sex with all these different women? Well, what I invite you to do is push it to the extreme. Let's say I gave you the option. You have a button or a magic ticket where you can get basically more sex than you can handle. Not unlimited, not with every woman in the world, but more than you can handle. Think about guys like The Weeknd, Drake, these these pop stars that have this whole brand about them. Think about guys like Dan Bilzerian or Elvis, last century, actually. So you think about guys like that had this opportunity. Look at where they ended. Look at Elvis. What happened? Overdose on drugs. Listen to The Weeknd lyrics. Look at Drake. Look at, who else did I give as an example? Dan Bilzerian. He wrote a whole book about how he was miserable. Think about that. Okay, on the other side, if you had the opportunity to have the most beautiful, amazing, loving, supportive, fulfilling family, please, which option gives you more meaning? So what I invite you to do is, now that you know this, you know that pursuing the meaningless sex won't lead to anywhere that you actually want to. You know it. It's been proven enough. You look at studies, the longest study in history proved that the quality of our relationships determines the quality of our lives. It has been proven enough. All right? So I invite you to set an aim, set an intention for one of these options, which, again, you want to increase the quality of your life. You know where to go. And as you're looking for that woman, you have very high standards. You develop yourself. And as you're doing that, you experience some things, of course. Because most likely it's not going to be the first woman you meet. So the first woman you meet, you're truthful with her. You're like, hey, those are my intentions, but, who knows where it can lead. And then you have some fun. That's okay. But I agree with him when only focusing on, okay, I'll have as much pleasure as possible right now doesn't lead to very good places.
No one who's sophisticated in any real sense is going to put up with that. And so it might work well in the short term, but it's a absolutely cataclysmically dreadful medium to long-term strategy. We know this too because psychopaths use strategy like that because they're predatory parasites. And to be a successful psychopath, unless you operate online, which is where most psychopaths operate now, you have to keep moving. You might say, well, everyone successful is a psychopath. It's like, no, that's actually wrong. Psychopaths are rarely successful. They're somewhat more successful than people who don't do anything. But in order to maintain any success at all, they have to be itinerant. Because if you're a predatory parasite and you manipulate other people, they figure it out and then they remember who you are, and people are very good at remembering those things, and then your reputation is damaged as a consequence of the truth, and then in order to continue operating successfully as a psychopath, you have to go somewhere else. So, back to pornography. Well, first of all, it's a surfeit of hedonistic pleasure. It's whim-based. It doesn't constitute the kind of action that lays the groundwork for functional relationships. It stops you from being desperate enough to go and put yourself on the line in a real relationship.
Oh my Lord, so important what he just said, so important. You complain about not having motivation. You complain about not having clarity, not having confidence, not having discipline. Oh, women are not attracted to me. I don't know what to do. Oh, women these days are, they're all different. Like, meaning they're different than before, and now they're all the same, and it's impossible to find a relationship. Well, think about what you're doing. Part of your brain is still the same brain as your ancestors hundreds of thousands of years ago, which had two purposes only. Number one, they had to reproduce, they had to survive, and then they had to reproduce. Those are the two things. So these days, you have more access to beautiful naked women from the comfort of your bed with the only effort of having a device and access to the internet, which if you're watching this, you do. That's all the effort it takes to have access to more beautiful naked women than the number one king of the world just a few hundred years ago. Even Elvis. I think it's like a bit less than 100 years ago even. The number one rock star in the world. What does that do to your brain, to your subconscious mind? Your brain goes, we just achieved the highest level of reward ever. We just achieved the biggest goal ever with so little effort. Look at us. We figured life out. Why would we do anything else? And so that's one of the most beautiful benefits of reprogramming your mind, reprogramming that brain, get it to the natural level it's supposed to be. And now you're like, okay, if I want to have sex, if I want to experience sexuality in my life, I better go out there and approach some woman. I better work on myself and become attractive, right? Become a better version of myself that can actually attract these women.
It trains you sexually to respond only to pornography. It requires that you use more and more novel forms of pornography as your habit develops in order to get the same kick. It increases the probability of impotence in real life. There's nothing about it that's good. And then the fact of its wide distribution online, let's say, also entices girls into the kind of quasi-prostitution that characterizes, OnlyFans and sites like that. So, no, this isn't a good thing. It's not a good thing. So,
he said it all. The last part, what else do you need, my brother? What else do you need? So if you're serious about actually quitting for good and solving that problem once and for all, stop breaking your promises. Oh, I'll stop forever. And then you don't do anything about it, or you try a corn block or whatever. If you're actually serious and you want to take serious action, I've created a free community full of men who are on the exact same journey as you, who've made it through, who can give you advice. And also, you have access to so much education and information on there, how to deal with the root cause of the problem, not just the superficial bullshit that you see out there. No fab streaks, all plaster solutions. We take care of the root cause. So if you're down, the community is free. The link is in the description. It was a new sort of video I tried. Let's see how it goes. And yeah, sending y'all much love. See you soon. Peace.